Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Qul huwallahu ahad, Allahus samad, lam yalid wa lam yulad, wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. Assalamu alaikum students. I am Hamadur Rahman from DPS Lahore. It's our lecture number 8. Today we are going to start chapter number 2 of class 9th biology, which is solving a biological problem. First of all, a short recap of our previous lecture. Students, in our previous lectures, we discussed chapter number 1 with you. In chapter number 1, we discussed division and branches of biology, relationship of biology to other sciences, and the level of organization. Now come to our today lecture. First of all, objectives of our today lecture. Students, after today's lecture, you will be able to understand what is biological method, explanation about biological problem, steps for solving a biological problem. First of all, what is biological method? The scientific method in which biological problems are solved is known as biological method. Biological method has played an important role in scientific research for almost 500 years. Students, man has always been a biologist. He had to be biologist in order to live. Early in history, he was a hunter of animals and a gatherer of fruits, seeds, and roots, etc. The more he knew about animals and their habitat, the more successful hunter he was. The more he knew about plants, the better he distinguished between edible and non-edible plants. Now, what is biological problem? A biological problem is any problem related to living organism is known as biological problem, or we can say a query or question about life that is either asked by someone or comes in biological mind by himself is called biological problem. Students, to solve a biological problem, here are few steps in biology. For the first step is recognition of biological problem, observation, hypothesis, experiment, conclusion, and results. Now, first step of biological problem is recognition of biological problem. The first step in biological method is to know that what is the problem. Recognition of biological problem is the basic step. The second step of biological method is observation. Observation consists of receiving knowledge of the outside world through our senses or recording information using scientific tools and instruments. Any data recorded during an experiment can be called an observation. Observations are made with 5 senses, which are vision, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. Now, an example of observation. Students, an example of an observation might be you notice that people living in village are more tough and strong. Now, types of observations. Students, observations are of two types. The first one is quantitative observations. Second one is qualitative observations. Quantitative observation, they are measurable quantities, while qualitative observation, they cannot be measured. Quantitative observations, they are more accurate, while qualitative are less accurate. quantitative observations, they are invariables, while qualitative observations are variables. Quantitative observation represent in terms of numbers, while qualitative observation represent in terms of comparison. Examples of quantitative observations are freezing point of water is 0 degrees Celsius, while boiling point of water is 100 degrees Celsius. While examples of qualitative observations are beauty and intelligence. Second example is the freezing point of water is colder than boiling point of water. Third step of biological method is hypothesis. Biologists organize his or her and other observations into data form and construct a statement. This tentative explanation of observation is called hypothesis. Example of hypothesis. An example of hypothesis might be that the village people are tough because they do more physical work. Here, characters of a good hypothesis. A good hypothesis should be a general statement. It should agree with available observation. It should be kept as simple as possible. It should be tentative idea. It should be testable. Fourth step of biological method is deduction. Biologists draw conclusions from hypotheses. Deductions are the logical consequence of hypotheses. For this purpose, a hypothesis is taken as true and expected results. Generally, if hypothesis is true, then one should expect deductions. Students, in deduction, we use if and then logic. Let's take an example. If cactus plant has nucleus in its cell and cactus is a plant, then all the plants have nucleus in their cells. Fifth and most important step of biological method is experiment. The most basic step of biological method is experimentation. Biologists perform experiments to check either hypothesis is right or wrong. Through experiments, scientists come to know which hypothesis is correct. The correct hypothesis is accepted and others are rejected. Students, in experiments, we use control experiment. What is a control experiment? Students, there are two groups in control experiments. First group is experimental group and second one is control group. Experimental group is a group of affected peoples, while control group is a group of unaffected people. Example of experimental group is group of malarial patient, while example of control group is group of healthy person. Students, now look at this video to understand what is controlled experiment. Scientific hypothesis is a testable explanation for something which comes through observation. Now, control experiment, a scientific test in which you keep all variables constant except for one you want to test. Let's take an example. Students, we know if we use fertilizer, then we have bigger and lusher leaves for a plant, flowers and fruits of vegetables. Now we design an experiment to check. Let's take two plants, have plant A and plant B. Both plants have equal size, same health and of same age. Potted these both plants in soil, watering these plants, and took observation. Now placed both potted plant in same area to receive light intensity. Students, plant receives same soil, same intensity of light, water, except fertilizer. Students, plant A fertilized with our desired fertilizer to check either fertilizer enhanced fertility or leaves in plant. Students, hypothesis: if plant is receive fertilizer, then it will be larger than plant B. We record observations for 3 weeks. And gather data arranged in a tabular form. We draw a comparative graph. Students, look at this graph. In this graph, you curve A for plant A and B low for plant B. Students, you look at this. Plant A have better growth and more leaves than as compared to plant B. This is due to use of fertilizer. So our statement hypothesis is, if we use fertilizer, then we obtain good plant, which is correct. 6th step of biological method is summarization of results. In next step, biologists get quantitative data from the experiments. Scientists then have to summarize the data they got. They make the results. Reporting the results is a 7 steps for biological method. In this step, a biologist summarized results is reported to international laboratories. Publishing of result is essential part of biological method. Students, now recap of our today lecture. In our today lecture, we discuss what is biological method, explanation about biological problem, and steps for solving a biological problem.